The sky above Romania would soon witness something unthinkable. Picture massive bombers screaming toward Earth at rooftop level. Imagine crews watching refineries explode beneath their wings. This wasn't any ordinary bombing run. This was madness disguised as strategy, and it would claim nearly half the attacking force in 30 brutal minutes. What target could justify such carnage? Why would experienced pilots volunteer for what everyone knew was suicide? The answer lay buried in Romania's oil fields, in a place called Ploesti. Oil wins wars. Without fuel, tanks become monuments. Fighter planes turn into expensive sculptures. Submarines become underwater coffins. Hitler understood this truth better than anyone. By 1943, one Romanian city pumped life into the Nazi war machine. Ploesti wasn't just an oil field. It was Hitler's jugular vein. More than 30% of German fuel flowed from this single source. Romanian crude powered every Messerschmitt that climbed skyward. It filled every U-boat that prowled the Atlantic. Every panzer that rolled across Europe drank from Ploesti's wells. The Nazis knew what they possessed. They had transformed the region into Fortress Europa's most protected target. Hundreds of anti-aircraft guns sprouted from innocent-looking farms. Railroad cars concealed deadly surprises. Even haystacks hid weapons capable of shredding aircraft. Steel cables stretched between hills like giant spider webs. Above it all, German fighter pilots circled like hungry wolves. Previous Allied attempts had ended in disaster. High-altitude bombing runs had accomplished nothing. Bombers arrived over target only to find smoke screens choking the sky. Fighter planes tore them apart before bombs could fall. Something different was needed. Something desperate. Something that broke every rule in the book. The plan that emerged defied logic. Instead of bombing from safe altitude, massive B-24 Liberators would attack at ground level, flying lower than church towers, skimming rooftops and chimneys, racing straight into concentrated enemy fire. One crew member scribbled in his diary the night before takeoff, "Tomorrow we don't fly a mission. We fly to our graves." August 1st, 1944 would test more than aircraft and bombs. It would test human courage against impossible odds. American air doctrine had always promised clean victories. The theory seemed foolproof on paper. Heavy bombers would cruise at 20,000 feet altitude. Their Norden bomb sites could supposedly drop explosives into pickle barrels. High above enemy fighters and flak guns, these flying fortresses would surgically remove military targets. Cities would remain untouched. Civilian casualties would stay minimal. Wars could be won without destroying entire nations. Europe shattered those dreams quickly. German fighters climbed higher than expected. Flak guns reached farther than anyone imagined. Weather turned precision bombing into guesswork. By 1943, daylight raids had become gambles with death. Each mission sent dozens of bombers limping home with holes torn through their fuselages. Too many never returned at all. Then intelligence reports revealed Ploesti's true importance. This wasn't just another industrial target. This was the Reich's beating heart. Hitler had wrapped it in layers of steel and fire. Conventional high-altitude attacks had failed repeatedly. Smoke generators could blind bombardiers in seconds. Fighter squadrons from multiple countries protected the refineries. Anti-aircraft guns created walls of exploding metal. Military planners faced an impossible choice: leave Ploesti untouched and watch Hitler's war machine roll on indefinitely, or attempt something so dangerous it bordered on mass suicide. They chose suicide. The B-24 Liberator would be their weapon. This heavy bomber had never been designed for low-level attack. It handled like a loaded truck at treetop height. But the Liberator possessed two crucial advantages. It could carry enormous bomb loads across vast distances, and its thick skin might survive the punishment waiting in Romania. Converting these high-altitude bombers into ground-hugging attackers required complete transformation. Armor plating was stripped away to save weight. Every unnecessary piece of equipment vanished. The goal was simple: make these lumbering giants fast enough and agile enough to surprise German defenders. Give them enough firepower to blast through opposition. Additional machine guns sprouted from every available mounting point. The Liberator's nose bristled with 13 .50 caliber weapons. This wasn't defensive armament anymore. This was offensive power designed to silence enemy positions. Special delayed action bombs filled each aircraft's belly. Regular explosives wasted their energy by detonating on impact. These weapons would punch through storage tank walls before exploding. The resulting fires would burn for weeks. Hitler's fuel supplies would literally go up in smoke. But any aircraft caught near these delayed explosions would become part of the inferno. Navigation presented another nightmare. No radar existed to guide bombers to target. Crews relied on dead reckoning and visual landmarks. Rivers, roads, and railroad tracks became their highway markers. Every pilot memorized reconnaissance photographs until he could draw Ploesti from memory. One wrong turn would scatter the entire formation. German fighters would pick off isolated bombers like wolves hunting sheep. Training took place in Libya's scorching desert. Crews learned to fly their modified Liberators just 50 feet above sand dunes. Propeller tips seemed ready to dig furrows in the earth. Formation, flying at such low altitude, demanded split-second timing. Wings overlapped by mere feet. One pilot's mistake could trigger mid-air collisions that would destroy multiple aircraft. Mock targets appeared across the desert floor. Oil drums and wooden structures simulated Romanian refineries. Crews practiced their attack runs until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. They called it suicide school. Everyone understood the odds they faced. Previous raids on Ploesti had been massacres. This low-level approach might catch defenders by surprise, or it might simply deliver American crews directly into concentrated enemy fire. Either way, hundreds of young men prepared to find out which outcome awaited them. The night before takeoff, letters home carried similar messages. Crews wrote goodbye without saying the word directly. They spoke of duty and sacrifice. They avoided mentioning fear. Dawn broke over Libya on August 1, 1944. 177 Liberators rumbled down desert runways. Their engines created thunder that shook the ground for miles. Each aircraft carried 10 men who had volunteered for what everyone called a suicide mission. They climbed skyward, carrying 8,000 pounds of delayed action bombs. Their destination lay hundreds of miles across the Mediterranean. The formation stretched across miles of blue sky. Silver bombers glinted in morning sunlight like schools of metallic fish. Radio silence maintained operational security. But every crew member understood the truth. Half of them would never see another sunset. The question wasn't whether casualties would be heavy. The question was whether enough bombers would survive to complete their mission. Navigation errors struck before German defenders fired a single shot. Colonel Addison Baker's lead group mistook another oil facility for their primary target. They dropped their bombs on secondary installations. The mistake scattered formations across Romanian airspace. It also awakened every defense position around Ploesti. Air raid sirens wailed their warnings. Smoke generators belched black curtains skyward. The city transformed into a fortress, ready for war. Hidden gun positions threw off their camouflage. Railroad cars split open to reveal anti-aircraft weapons. Even innocent-looking farmhouses sprouted deadly cannons. Colonel John Kane's group approached the correct target minutes later. But surprise had been lost. German gunners tracked their approach through telescopic sights. Fingers tightened on firing mechanisms. Hell erupted around the incoming bombers. Flak guns that had been designed to shoot down high-altitude aircraft now fired directly into approaching formations. Shells exploded at point-blank range. The famous German 88mm cannons proved devastatingly effective at ground level. Their high-velocity shells could penetrate bomber fuselages like tissue paper. Crews felt each impact shake their aircraft. Liberators shuddered under the punishment. Wings developed holes large enough to crawl through. Engines burst into flames. Control surfaces disappeared in explosions of metal fragments. Radio channels filled with desperate voices. Pilots reported hydraulic failures and wounded crew members. Gunners called out fighter aircraft diving from above. The bombers pressed forward through walls of explosions. They skimmed over sunflower fields and village rooftops. Their own guns blazed continuously at ground targets. 13 machine guns in each bomber's nose created streams of fire that swept across enemy positions. Tracers drew bright lines through smoke and flame. German gunners died at their weapons, but closing distance made survival nearly impossible. At 50 feet altitude, even rifles could damage aircraft. Every Romanian with a weapon seemed to be shooting skyward. Then came the moment of truth. Bombs released from aircraft bellies and punched into massive storage tanks. For several seconds, nothing happened. Delayed fuses ticked toward detonation. The world exploded. Storage tanks burst like enormous firecrackers. Crude oil fountains shot hundreds of feet into the air. Everything caught fire at once. Ploesti became a vision of hell. Walls of flame towered above surrounding countryside. Black smoke columns rose toward heaven like funeral pyres. The heat could be felt for miles. Liberators had to fly through the inferno they had created. Cockpit temperatures soared beyond human endurance. Paint blistered off fuselages. Engine air intakes sucked in superheated gases. Some bombers simply disintegrated in the furnace. Wings melted off fuselages. Crews vanished in fireballs that consumed everything. Radio transmissions cut off in mid-sentence. Others crashed directly into refinery towers. Metal and flesh merged with industrial structures in explosions visible from the horizon. Death came too quickly for final words. German fighters added their fury to the slaughter. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs darted between smoke columns like deadly birds. Their cannons and machine guns found easy targets. Damaged bombers limping away from target became prey for hunting pilots. German aces scored multiple kills in minutes. The sky rained burning debris and human bodies. Yet American crews fought back with desperate courage. Gunners stood at their weapons despite fatal wounds. Pilots held burning aircraft level so crews could bail out. The Hell's Wench, riddled with holes and trailing fire, refused to break formation. Her crew kept fighting until ammunition ran out. Then they fought with bare hands. Colonel Addison Baker's bomber caught fire over the target. Flames engulfed the cockpit and wings. He could have turned away to save himself. Instead, he held course until his crew could escape. Baker died gripping his control wheel. His body was found still in the pilot's seat. His sacrifice allowed others to complete their mission and return home. In 30 minutes of combat, 54 Liberators were destroyed. Some exploded in midair. Others belly-landed in fields of burning oil. A dozen more crashed in neutral countries. Barely half the attacking force staggered back across the Mediterranean. Their aircraft looked like flying wrecks. Engines coughed black smoke. Fuselages resembled Swiss cheese. Behind them, Ploesti burned like a preview of doomsday. Oil storage tanks fed flames that would burn for weeks. Refineries collapsed into twisted metal sculptures. Nearly 40% of Romania's refining capacity lay in ruins. Hitler's fuel lifeline had been severed with surgical precision. But the price had been almost unbearable. More than 400 American aircrew were dead, wounded, or missing. Entire bomber crews had vanished in seconds. The Mediterranean carried oil slicks and floating debris for days. Survivors who reached Libya were changed men. They had looked into hell and somehow lived to tell about it. Their eyes carried haunted expressions that would never fade. Ground crews wept when they counted returning aircraft. Empty hard stands marked where bombers should have landed. Mechanics searched wreckage for salvageable parts. Letters to families would carry news no parent wanted to read. Missing in action. Killed in action. Prisoner of war. Each telegram represented shattered dreams and empty futures. Yet the strategic results were undeniable. German fuel supplies dropped dramatically. Tank divisions sat immobile for lack of gasoline. Fighter squadrons were grounded. Hitler was forced to divert precious resources to rebuilding Ploesti's refineries. Steel and concrete needed at the front lines went to Romanian construction projects instead. The Reich's war machine sputtered and slowed. Soviet advances accelerated as German reserves ran short of fuel. The invasion of Normandy found fewer German aircraft in opposition. 5 Congressional Medals of Honor were awarded for heroism during the raid. Never before had a single mission produced so many recipients of America's highest decoration. Colonel John Kane received recognition for leading his group through impossible odds. His leadership saved dozens of lives and ensured mission success. The stories of individual courage became legends. Gunners who kept firing with fatal wounds, pilots who flew burning aircraft to safety, heroes born in 30 minutes of hell. But medals couldn't resurrect the dead or heal the wounded. Victory celebrations felt hollow when half the participants were missing. Success tasted bitter when measured in blood. American air doctrine changed forever after Ploesti. Low-level bombing raids were abandoned as tactically unsound. High-altitude precision bombing returned with better equipment and fighter escorts. Long-range P-51 Mustang fighters would soon clear German interceptors from European skies. Strategic bombing would continue from safe altitudes with acceptable losses. The desperate gamble at Ploesti had succeeded in its immediate goal. Hitler's fuel supplies were crippled at a crucial moment. But the human cost made such tactics unthinkable. Years later, survivors gathered to remember fallen comrades. They spoke of courage and sacrifice. They honored those who never came home. But they still smelled burning oil in their dreams. The raid on Ploesti stands as testimony to human bravery under impossible circumstances. Young men faced certain death to strike a blow for freedom. Their sacrifice shortened the war, but it also demonstrated war's terrible arithmetic. Victory requires payment in blood and treasure. Sometimes the price seems too high to justify the results. Strategic planners learned hard lessons from Romanian skies. Courage alone cannot overcome overwhelming odds. Technology and tactics must evolve to protect those who serve. The Liberator crews who flew to Ploesti knew they were writing history with their lives. They understood the odds against survival. Yet they climbed into their aircraft anyway. They flew not for glory or recognition. They flew because someone had to cut Hitler's lifeline, even if cutting it meant bleeding to death in the process. Their legacy transcends military statistics and strategic analyses. They proved that ordinary men can accomplish extraordinary things when circumstances demand ultimate sacrifice. The fires that consumed Ploesti burned brighter than the flames that destroyed it. Those fires still burn in memory of crews who gave everything for freedom. History remembers the Liberators not just as bombers, but as symbols of human determination. Angels who descended into hell so others might live in light. Their flight continues to thunder across time, reminding future generations that freedom's price is always paid by those willing to die for it. In Romanian skies, young Americans learned war's harshest truth. Victory belongs to those brave enough to sacrifice everything, even when everything includes their own lives.